All right, so graphs, let's get started. Now, the good thing about today, you don't need graph paper. All you need to do is take a ruler and you're going to draw your X and Y axes. For those who don't know what your X and Y axes are, right? Your X and Y axes are just the main vertical and horizontal lines on your graph. In other words, if you look at the graph here, you will see a main horizontal line. You'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The horizontal line is called your x-axis. And your main vertical line going upwards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, is your y-axis. You don't need graph paper. All you need to do is draw this X and Y axis and use your estimation to put 1, 2, 3. You don't have to draw the small squares, right? So you're just drawing the vertical and horizontal lines and labeling it X and Y. Draw that quickly and let me know when you are ready. You just must have the 0 to 6, 0 to 7, and 0 to 6 on the X and Y axis, nothing else. First of all, whenever we're asked to draw a graph, right, the examiner will most likely use the word plot, P-L-O-T. To plot a graph is basically draw a graph very, very accurately. There are two types of graphs you're going to meet in life. It's either when you draw a graph, you're going to get a perfectly straight line. So you can either get a straight line, or the other type of graph you can get is a curve. Like you can get a curve going up, a curve going down. You have all kind of different curves. The point is the curves are opposite of straight lines. And it's a really, really, really good idea at the beginning of the question to kind of try to predict what kind of graph you are going to get. Because if it's a straight line, the amount of working you will have to do will be much, much, much less. Curves are more complex, and curves, the amount of working you're going to have to do is significantly more. In other words, what I'm trying to say is the straight lines are the easy questions to draw, and the curves are the harder ones to draw. But how do you know whether you're going to get a straight line or a curve? It's very, very simple. There's a general rule. Of course, it has little exceptions to the rule, but the general rule of thumb is this. If your equation only has simple things like X and Y in it, when you are about to draw it, you will get a straight line. However, if your equation has complex things like X squared or Y squared, or I'm hoping you don't get X to the power 3, or even the square root of X or the square root of Y, or if the X and Y's are underneath numbers. So like if you have 1 on X or 3 on Y, you notice in these cases, the X and Y's are underneath numbers. Whenever you see complex things like that in your equation, you are going to get a curve. So I want everyone to take down this small note here, right? I'm going to take my time today. And today, before we draw a graph, we're going to try to predict what we're going to get before we actually draw it. So let me know when you're finished over there. All right, so let's look at the equation the examiner wants us to draw. It's written right here. Y is equal to minus X plus 5. So he wants us, or she wants us, to draw that equation in graph form. From looking at that equation, do you think we're going to get a straight line, or do you think we're going to get a curve? Let's try to predict that first? Straight line or a curve? What are your thoughts on that? Right, and it's obviously, I mean, it's straight out, right? It's not even a trick question, right? You're going to get a straight line. Because look at the equation. It's simply y is equal to minus x plus 5. Do you see anything fancy like x squared, y squared, x cubed? No, it only has simple letters like y and x. The y and x are not even squared. The y and x are not underneath any numbers. So definitely, it's going to be a straight line. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, and it's going to be very, very important, whenever you're drawing any graph in the world, once it has a mixture of letters, like once it has X and Y in it, which is going to be 99% of your questions, you must always make sure Y is the subject. And I'm going to be saying this over and over today. What do I mean by Y must be the subject? It means that when at the point of trying to draw the graph, Y must be on one side by himself, and everybody else must be on the other side. So this first question today has no tricks. Y is the subject, and everybody else is on the other side. Now, whenever you're trying to figure out whether it's a straight line or a curve, you have to make sure Y is the subject. And then only when Y is the subject, then ask yourself if it has simple things like X and Y, or if it have fancy stuff like X squared and Y squared, okay? But this question, like I said, has no tricks. So do you think this is going to be the easy type of question today, or the hard type of questions? What do you all think? Right, and you all are getting it, right? It's going to be the easy type of questions today. Now, here's the thing. When you're drawing a straight line, you only need to draw 2 or 3 points on the graph. Now, here the words I use, 2 or 3 points. Why am I using the word or? Because the truth is, to draw a straight line, you only need 2 points. If I put 2 points here, I can use my ruler to connect it. But your teacher will tell you to put 3 points. The reason you just put 3 points is so that you're less likely to make a mistake. So I'm going to go with the 3 points, even though realistically, you only need 2 points. So here's what's going to happen in the exam. Whenever you have to draw a straight line, you need 3 points. You'll notice you have a little table here with blank values in it. The top is called the X's, the underneath is called the Y's. For straight lines, you are going to have to choose your X values. Yes, you heard me correct. You are in charge of choosing your X values, which is kind of strange, right? Because if I tell everyone in this classroom that you could choose your own values for X, does everyone agree that everybody's going to choose 3 different values of X? Well, what do you all think about that? You think everybody's going to choose the same 3 values if I give you the choice of choosing? Some people are going to choose 5. One person might choose, well, I'm going to choose 6, 2, and 1. And next person might say, well, I am going to choose 102 minus 5. Because the truth is, you are in charge of choosing your X values. Now, you have to be smart about choosing your X values. Let me explain what I mean by smart. Remember, your horizontal line is your X-axis and your vertical line is your Y-axis. You notice your X-axis starts at 0 and goes up to 7, usually the examiner will print the graph for you. So if your x-axis goes from 0 to 7, don't you think you should choose values between 0 and 7? Because if you choose anything smaller than 0 or larger than 7, it's not going to fit on your graph, right? So you gotta be smart. So let me be in charge of choosing your values of x for the time being. I am going to choose 1. You don't always have to choose 1, 2, 3. You can choose 1, 3, and let's choose 5. Does everybody agree that the values I choose, do you think that's appropriate values right now? Sometimes you choose values between the 0 and the 7, like what's on the x-axis, and later on in the question, it turns out to be a bad value. That will happen every once in a while. If you happen to choose a bad value, just erase it and choose a different value. Okay, so great. I'm choosing 1, 3, and 5 because I know 1, 3, and 5 can fit on my graph paper. After you choose your x values, here's what you have to do. You have to calculate your y values. I spell calculate wrong. It's not calculate. All right. To calculate your y values, you have to run to the equation over here. Notice y is the subject. So to calculate this y value here, let me write the equation. Y is equal to minus x plus 5. To calculate the corresponding y value when x is 1, you just go to the equation and you replace x with the value above. As simple as that. So in our first question, what are we pretending x is? Aren't we pretending x is how much? 1. So I erase the 1, the x, sorry, and in brackets, I put 1. Remember, x used to live over here. The moral of the story is this. When you replace x with a value, please put it in brackets. What will we get here? How much is minus 1 plus 5? Everyone should be able to add and subtract positive and negative numbers by now because we cleared that up over the summer. We cleared that up over in September as well. And that's the core of maths. Minus 1 plus 5 is 4. So that means when x is 1, the corresponding value for y is 4. Let's calculate the corresponding value for y when x is what? 3. You notice 3 is on top. So we need the corresponding y value. So let's do the calculation for this question mark. We go back to the equation. Remember this equation. This time we have to pretend x is 3. So we erase Mr. X and we put what in its place now? 3. And we work this out to get the value of y. Minus 3 plus 5 is positive 2. So that means this y value is now positive 2. All right? I think you're getting the hang here now. For the next one, we have to pretend x is how much? 5. So we're going to pretend x is 5 and calculate the corresponding y value. So we put down the equation like this. 1 second. We have to erase the x and put what in brackets? 5. And when we work that out, minus 5 plus 5 is 0. Right? Now you're going to have to show the examiner every piece of working. I know some of you all could work this out in your head. You see this, and those 3 pieces of working, you have to show the examiner, otherwise you won't get full marks. So we're almost ready to draw our graphs because we chose our X values very wisely to make sure it can fit on our X axis. And then we used our equation to calculate the Y values. Everybody take down everything up to there, and then we're going to draw the graph together. For those who don't know how to plot points on a graph, I'm going to do it very, very slowly. So don't worry. All right. So what I need to do now, I just need to clear up this space over here. So I need to erase everything underneath here. But I trust everyone understood how we calculated the Y values. Now it's time to plot our points. Now, whenever you're plotting points, right? Whenever you are plotting points, a point is made up of an X value and a Y value. You could name the points anything you want. For example, the first point, you could call it A. The second point is B, and the next point is C, right? You can name it anything you want. You could call it P, Q, R, X, Y, Z. But most people would just simply choose A, B, C if it's 3 points. This is how you write points properly in maths. If it's point A you are talking about, you put A, open brackets, and you notice A has an X value and a Y value. You must, and I'm going to be saying this over and over, must put the X value first. So it will be 1, 4 close brackets. This is the X, this is the Y. You write them horizontally with a little comma in between. The next point B will be what? 3, 2. You put what? The X value, comma, then the Y value. And the same thing goes for what? Point C. 5, 0. You put the X first and then the Y. And you'll probably say, well, why so saying it so much? Because even the form 5s, they mix it up. Because when you're under pressure in the exam now, it's easy to put Y first by mistake and X second. The easy way to remember it is X comes before Y in the alphabet. So X always comes first and then Y. So everyone write down the points like this. And when we write it down like this, then we are going to plot it on the graph paper itself. Right? So we get a different color here. Let me get a little red or something. All right. So let's plot the point A. So let's put a little dot here so we can focus. 1, 4. 1, 4 means you're going to go to 1 on the x-axis. So you drive, you always start at 0. So you drive to 1, and how much is the y-coordinate? 4. So that means you're going to drive upwards to 4. Let me see if that makes sense. If I put a dot here, you notice it hovers over the 1 on the x-axis, and it's in line with 4 on the y-axis. But you put in 1 dot, and this here is the point A. In the exam, you have to write the information next to the point after you put it on the graph. Let me do a second one for those who are scratching their heads. To plot point B, its values are 3, 2. Remember, the 3 is the x and the 2 is the y. So that means we go to 3 on the x-axis, look at here, and then we go up to how much on the y? 2. And when I plot the point here, look at it. That red dot is hovering over 3 on the x-axis and in line with 2 on the y-axis. So I'll put the information next to it so the examiner can't find any excuse to take away marks from me. Now the next one, point C, has a dot, a 0. So, but the first one is x and the second one is y. So we go to 5 on the x-axis, but because the y value is 0, we don't have to go up and we don't have to go down. The dot will be living on the x-axis itself because it's 5, 0. When the y value is 0, you don't have to go up or down. It lives on the x-axis itself. So this is the point C. I'm going to put the information next to it. Everyone take down up to there. Right. Now, when you plot the points, they should all line up to give you a straight line. Now, whenever you're drawing a straight line, you're supposed to use your ruler and connect the 3 points. Okay? Everyone connect the 3 points, and you're basically 99% finished. So take your ruler and connect all 3 points. Now, here's one thing you need to do. Whenever you're drawing a straight line, after you connect the 3 points, you notice that the graph doesn't really cover the whole span of the paper. Look at the blue part here. You're supposed to use your ruler and extend the line so that it goes to the end of the graph paper. All straight lines, I want you to do that. Whenever you after connecting the 3 points, I want you to take your ruler. It's a good idea to have a long ruler and extend the graph so that both sides of the graph meet the end of the graph paper. That's always a very, very good idea, and the examiner will want you to do that, but only for straight lines. For curves, you just connect the points, and for curves, you do not bother to extend it to the graph paper. Right? So everyone extend it, and if you do everything correct, it should cut close to 5 on the y-axis. I know it mightn't cut exactly on 5 because you don't have official graph paper, but it should cut close to 5. Verify when you're finished with everything on the screen, please. Let's move on to question 2. Right, now, this one looks a little bit harder, right? Bear with me here. Draw back a next x and y axis, but this time I want the x-axis to go up to 9. You see 9 here. And I want the y-axis to go up to 8. Make sure it's exactly 9 and 8. I need for everyone to have the same values so that we don't, we're going to run into some problems. And I want to make sure all of us run into the same exact problem today. Let me know when you are. So let's talk about this scarier looking question. And you all have to admit that this equation here, look at it up here. It looks a little bit scarier than the first equation. Tell me something. Is it okay to make the decision if it's a straight line or a curve? Yeah? Is it okay to jump to the conclusion that it's a straight line or a curve as yet? What are your thoughts on this? Right, now I see people are telling me no. No, the answer is no, right? Let me explain why. Remember in the first question, it was y was equal to minus x plus 5. This was the previous question. Whenever you are trying to figure out whether it's a straight line or a curve, you always have to make sure who is the subject. You always have to make sure y is the subject. In other words, y must be on one side alone with nothing else, and everybody else is on the other side. Only after you do that, then you ask yourself, do we have simple things like x and y, or do we have fancy stuff like x squared and y squared? So if you look at this question today, right, you will notice it's, let me write it back here so you can focus. It's 20y minus 10x is equal to 40. You will notice y is not the subject. You have 20y minus 10x and all kind of madness on the left-hand side. We need to sort that out first, okay? So let me write this a little bit smaller. I think I wrote it too large because I need the space. So I have 20y minus 10x is equal to 40. So somebody had a good question. Remember I told you you must make y the subject. So someone asked, if it's okay to make X the subject, the answer is no. You always make Y the subject. Now, don't get me wrong. If you were to make X the subject, I'm just saying if, you will get the same graph, but that method is 100% wrong because we're supposed to choose the X values and we're always supposed to calculate the Y values. So they just take my word for it. If you have X and Y, please make Y the subject. So I want you all to help me make Y the subject here. Who are we going to throw across first, the 20 or the minus 10x? Because we want to keep Y on one side. See if you could refresh your memory on all the tutorials you did for homework in September, like when you're making X or Y the subject, right? And you all are correct. The first person you're going to throw across is the minus 10x. When you throw across minus 10x, you're going to get positive 10x. So let me write what we have so far. 20y is equal to 40 plus 10x. Now, and we could simplify this, and we could say 20y is equal 40 plus 10. Isn't that 50x? Is that correct so far, guys? And I said something wrong on purpose. You all notice that I'm not supposed to be able to squish the 40 and 10x together, right? Because one has x and the other does not have x. You cannot squish those two together. They're incompatible. So unfortunately, I have to leave it as 40 plus 10x. You all remember that from September? I said that over and over and over, and it was also in the homework tutorials, okay? But I know it's easy to forget. Is Y the subject? Have we made Y the subject? Is the case closed? Can I move on? Right, and I'm glad you all are picking up on these slight errors. Y is still not the subject. We still have to get rid of Mr. 20. Now, when you throw across the 20, you have two items waiting here. Two items. You have two options. You could draw one big divide sign and put the 20 underneath, because when you throw across a multiply, you get a divide. It's not minus 20. Somebody has that wrong. When you throw across a multiply, you get a divide, but the sign remains the same. It remains positive 20 when it goes underneath. Or the other option is, and this is the one I would prefer, right, today, instead of drawing one big divide sign and putting 120, you can divide both of them at the same point in time by 20. Either of them are correct. Because think about it. Even if you put the big divide sign like this, and you put one of the 20s, doesn't that mean both of them on top get divided by 20 anyway? So what we should do is, in this particular case, I'm going to put a divide by 20 here separately and a 20 here separately. Sometimes when I think it's convenient, I would put one big divide sign, but today it's not too convenient. I think the better version is this one. Do you all think you can help me simplify this? 40 divided by 20 is 2, and 10 divided by 20 is a half. Or you could put what? 0.5x. Everybody with me so far? You can either put the half or the 0.5. It's really, really, really up to you. Take down everything up to there. And if you look at it, we have succeeded in making who the subject? Y. Y is on one side, everybody else is on the other side. For all graphs, always make Y the subject first. Now we can come to the conclusion whether it's a straight line or a curve. Which one do you all think it will be now? When we draw this graph, will we get a straight line or a curve? it's a why? Oh, yeah, a lot of people are saying curves, but I think it's a straight line. Look at it. It only has simple things like y and x. This x not underneath or anything. This is a half x. This x actually belongs on top if you write it like this. So it's still simple things like y and x. So if we draw this, we will get what? A straight line. It have no x squared, it have no square root. It's going to be a straight line. For those who got it wrong, like you set curve, you understand now that it's going to be a straight line. So I have to erase this on top now, and I'm going to write back the equation we're going to be dealing with. The equation that we're going to be dealing with is a y is equal to 2 plus a half x, okay? Now just showing you how I got that there, right? Sorry, I'm gonna start recording. All right, so now that we have our equation with y being the subject and we simplified it and we made it look nice, remember this is a straight line. So we have to do what with the x values? We have to choose our x values. And after we choose our x values, we have to calculate, or put CAL for calculate, we have to calculate our y values. So everybody has to choose their x values. Now, if I ask everyone to choose their x values, everybody in the class is going to choose different x values, and all our y calculations are going to be different. It's going to cause chaos in class. So let me choose for you. I'm going to choose 0, 0, 5, and 10. Are those good values to choose? Let me know. Are those appropriate values to choose for x, given our graph paper? Which one is the bad one? I chose a bad value on purpose. Which one is the bad one? At 10, right? Because that my x-axis only goes up to 9. Look at it. I cannot choose 10. Where would 10 fit? It cannot fit on the graph paper. So I could probably choose a next value. I could choose 9, or I could choose probably 7. Okay? Right? Now, let me give you some advice. You see that it have the number, the fraction a half. When you find half of something, like when you work this out, sometimes we will get decimals, sometimes we will get what? Whole numbers. I know everybody here prefers whole numbers. When you find half of something, do you want to find half of an odd number or half of an even number? Which one will give you a whole number? Even, right? So you gotta be smart about it. Nothing wrong with choosing the odd numbers, but you want your calculation to be as easy as possible. So for my x values, I don't think I should choose 5 and 7. Those are odd numbers. To keep my calculations simple, how about I choose 4 and 6 and I leave the 0? So that way I'm confident that when I do my calculations, I'm going to get whole numbers. Do you all think you all can find the missing values here now? Pretend x is 0. Replace x with 0. Then replace x with 4. And then replace x with 6. And calculate the missing y values. Just take a shot. It doesn't matter to get all correct, right? Right? All right. So let's see what my calculation would look like. So I'm going to find the first missing y value by pretending x is how much? 0. So let's go to the equation here. Y is equal to 2 plus a half. And I have to replace this x here with 0. Take my advice, and guys, when you're replacing x with something, please put your brackets and then the value. The examiner will want to see those brackets. A half multiplied by 0 is 0. Anything multiplied by 0 is 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. A few people did not get 2 over here. Some people put 3 by mistake, and some people put 2.5 by mistake. For those who got it wrong, please confirm with me that y is 2. Let's calculate the next y value when we're pretending x is 4. Y is equal to 2 plus a half brackets. And what am I going to replace the x with? 4. Now, these things are simple enough to work out in your head. A half multiplied by 4 is 2. A half of 4 is 2. And then you have to add this 2 after it. So a half of 4 is 2, plus 2 is 4. So we're going to get 4 over here. Simple stuff. Let's calculate the last missing y value. Let's see if you all got all correct. Y is equal to 2 plus a half. We're going to pretend x is 6. So in brackets, you throw away that x and you put 6. A half multiplied by 6 is 3. A half of 6 is 3. Plus this 2 waiting on the outside. 3 plus 2 is 5. Look for your mistakes, guys. If you made any mistakes, all the working is on the screen. I'm going to give you 20 seconds to, to make your corrections. So what we're going to do now, we'll name the points. We'll name the first one A, B, and C. Remember, each point has an X and Y coordinate associated with it. The first point A is how much? 0, 2. We put the X first, then the Y. B is 4, 4, and C is 6, 5. Put the X first, then the Y. Let's plot all 3 points. The first point is a kind of odd one. It's 0, 2. Notice the 0 comes first this time. So that means on the x-axis, you're remaining at 0. That's the origin here. X is 0, and how high do we have to rise? To 2. Make a different color. That's the first point there. 0 on the x-axis, and then we rise to 2. So this here is point A. 0, 2. The next point is B, 4, 4. 4 on the X. And then we rise to also 4 on the Y. Right. And the last point is 6, 5. 6 on the X. And we rise to how much? 5. If you do everything correct, all the points, if you connect them, should form a straight line, like a perfect straight line. But remember, when you connect the 3 points, I want you to use your ruler and extend it to the end of the graph paper. So make sure you have the green portion as well. With straight lines, after you draw the points, plot the points, connect the graph so that it goes to the end of the graph paper. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention in the last question, whenever you finish drawing the graph, you see the equation that the examiner asks you to draw, you have to write it next to it. So you can write it like this. Didn't we just draw 20y minus 10x equal to 40? So you can write it along the line like this, at any point on the line, but just don't write it too large. I forgot to mention that in the first question. Only when you do all of these steps, then you get full marks in the exam. Look for your mistakes and let me know when you're ready to move on. All right, so let's move on. All right. So everyone should have a better idea now of how to go about drawing the graphs. How much of you all have done something called simultaneous equations? And in school, they ask you to solve a simultaneous equations. Let me hear from the class here. All right. So the truth is, it doesn't matter if you did simultaneous equations or not in school, right? For those who did simultaneous equations in school, only for those who did it, I think the teacher would have mentioned that there are more than one ways to solve a simultaneous equation. And in a simultaneous equation, they just give you two equations at the same time. And your job is to solve for X and to solve for Y. But your teacher would have mentioned different methods of solving simultaneous equations. For example, I think most teachers start off with something called elimination method. There's another one called the substitution method. There's one called matrices method. And guess what? You can also use graphs to solve simultaneous equations. For those who never did simultaneous equations and you don't need to know it as yet, what I want you to take away from this question is how to draw the graphs. So all we're going to be doing is drawing two graphs instead of one graph today. And I'm going to show you how to use graphs to solve simultaneous equations. But at the end of the day, it's just drawing graphs. So it's just practicing drawing graphs. Now, I need for everyone to do this the same way, right? Look at how my graph is laid out. It has negative and positive values on the y-axis. Notice your y-axis starts at 0. The above part goes to positive 4. Below, it goes -1, -2, -3, -4. It's hard to see the negative signs. So the y-axis goes from +4 all the way down to -4. The x-axis is in the middle, and he's regular, boring, positive numbers all the way up to 10. I want everyone to draw one graph. You only need one graph, one sheet today in order to get out the questions. Because I know somebody's going to ask, since we have two equations, do we need two separate graph papers? The answer is no. We're going to draw both graphs on the same exact graph paper. Let me know when you are ready and you've finished drawing the blank graph paper. So we have two graphs to draw because they gave us two equations, which means we have two graphs to draw. Now this could get a little bit complicated. So what I'm going to do, you see the first equation, I'm going to do everything in red. And we're going to use the top table here. So for the first graph, before we even try to draw it, remember, we need to make who the subject? Y. Do you all think for the first equation, I'll call the first one equation 1, do you all think you can at least make Y the subject and then determine whether it's a straight line or a curve that we're going to get for the first equation? Be careful, huh? This number touching Y is not 5, it's -5. The examiner will try to trick you with those little minus signs. So quickly make Y the subject, simplify it as much as you can, and send the answer to me on the chat. So for the first equation, well, let me do the work in here. Remember, we have 5x minus 5y is equal to 30. We want to solve for y. So who's the first person we have to throw across? This positive 5x. When you throw across positive 5x, you will get what? Minus 5x. Look for the mistakes that you may have made. But we're not finished. We want to make who the subject? Y. But who is touching y? The -5. Now that -5 is a multiply. When you throw across a multiply, you get what? A divide. But don't we have two items waiting here that we cannot squish together? we have to divide both of them by what? -5. Remember, when you throw across a multiply, you get a divide, but the sign does not change. So the -5 remains -5. Let's simplify this, right? 30 divided by -5. I think, guys, you have to really pay attention to your signs here. This 30 is positive, this 5 is negative. When you divide positive 30 by -5, you get -6. -6. Too much people have +6 over here. Also, in the second part, this minus sign belongs to the top here by the -5x. Let's do the numbers first. 5 divided by 5 is 1. I agree with that. You have to put the x here. And when you divide two negatives, you get a positive. The answer is -6 plus 1x. For those who got it wrong, look back at all the working, look back at all the steps, and make sure you understand where you could have gone wrong. Because those negative signs is what is given the majority of the class problems. All right. And once again, you cannot squish these two together to get 7 or anything like that. Doesn't this 1 have an x? Doesn't this 6 have no x? So that's as simple as that will get. You cannot squish them together. Look for your mistakes. And you can answer me now. Will you get a straight line or a curve? For this graph now, we made y the subject. This is definitely a straight line because once again, it has nothing fancy in it. And the x not underneath any numbers or anything. All right, there's no square, there's no square root of x. Again, a straight line. Okay, guys, so take down everything on the screen. I'm going to have to erase everything, and then we can actually draw the first graph. Right? All right, guys. So we have the equation on top there, right? Now it's time to draw our first graph. We're only dealing with equation 1. So forget about simultaneous equations now. We're just drawing a graph. That's all we're doing. What are the steps? We need to choose our x values. Our x-axis starts at 0 and ends where? At 10. So let's just choose some values here. Let's choose 2, 3, and 5. Let's just choose those values and see if those values will work. 2, 3, and 5. Those seems like good values, right? Look 2 here, look 3 here, and look 5 here. So I know those values can fit on the x-axis. Could you all kindly calculate the y values, right? Remember, you're just replacing the x in brackets with 2, then 3, then 5. Remember, that's -6, so make sure you add and subtract properly. I just want to work out the first one to make sure you're on the right track. For the first one, you're supposed to have y is equal to -6 plus 1, and you put 2 in its place. For the next one is -6 plus 1, and you put 3 in the place of the x in brackets. And for the next one is -6 plus 1 and 5. 1 by 2 is 2. -6 plus 2 is -4. I think I have that one correct. 1 multiplied by 3 is 3. -6 plus 3 is -3. And the next one, 1 by 5 is 5. -6 plus 5 is -1. All right, so we're supposed to get -4, -3, -1. You don't have to copy down my answers and make sure I'm reasoning it out on your end. Once you get those values, well, I'm going to call this one A, this one B, this one C. So point A is 2 minus 4. Point B is 3 minus 3. Point C is what? 5 minus 1. Plot it on the graph and take your ruler and connect the 3 points and go to the end of the graph paper. Extend the line to the end of the graph paper. I'll give you a minute for that one. Values. So point A, let's get some red here. Right, it's red I'm using. Point A is 2 minus 4. So we go to positive 2 on the x-axis, but the y value is negative 4. So we do not go up. We have to go down. It will be down here is point A. Here will be 2 minus 4 because minus 4 is here. Look at it. 2 on the x-axis and we drop down to minus 4. So if you got it wrong, that's okay. It's probably the first time you're seeing negative y values, but I'm pretty sure it will fall into place now. Point B is 3 minus 3. 3 on the x-axis, positive 3. And then we go down to negative 3. Point B. Oops. Now point C. 5. And we go down to where? Minus 1. Take your ruler, connect these 3 points, and go to the end of the graph paper. Right? Obviously, yours will look a little better than mine. I don't have a ruler tool on my end. Right? But make sure you understand the negative y values. All the y values today happen to be negative. So that means they go below the x-axis, not above. Let me know when you're ready to move on. Forgot? Remember, when we're finished drawing a graph, we have to put the equation next to it. So I'm already supposed to put 5x minus 5y is equal to 13 next to the graph. Okay? So make sure and do that for the examiner. He or she will appreciate it, and you will get marks for it. So you might as well do it. Right, so we're ready to move on to the second graph now. I'm going to do everything for that one in blue. Do you all think you all can do a little jump start for me here? For the second equation, the blue one. How about you follow the same procedure? You make y the subject, and then we will choose 3 values for x, and we'll calculate the y values. So take a little jump start on that one. Not jump start, a little head start on it. Right? So for the first equation, we're trying to make who the subject? Y. So we have to throw across who first? The positive 2x. You will get minus 2x. Then we have to throw across who last? Mr. Minus 4. Now this Mr. Minus 4 is a secret multiply. So when you throw him across, everybody here gets divided by minus 4. Right? When you do that, you will get 14 divided by negative 4. Remember, this 14 is positive and this 4 is negative. You'll get minus 3.5. You can double check it, right? 2 divided by 4 is a half. You can put the 0.5 if you wish. But when you divide 2 minus, you get a positive. And don't forget to put back the x. Remember, you cannot squish these two together. You cannot squish them together because one has an x and one does not have an x. What we want to do now is choose some values for x, right? Let me help you choose the values for x now. Well, what you want to do is choose odd numbers. The reason you're going to choose odd numbers, because if you put an odd number by x, you will get something 0.5. And remember, you have to add 3.5. So the 0.5 and the 0.5 will combine to give you a whole number. It will make life easier, right? If you want to choose even numbers in the exam for X, you're going to get the same graph. I'm just trying to make life easier. So let's choose, how about 1, 3, and 5. Let's calculate the corresponding Y values. You think you all could do that? Calculate the corresponding Y values if we choose X as 1, 3, and 5. All right. When you work out each one of these, you're supposed to get -2 and -1. -3, -2, and -1, right? A few people got the last one wrong, the -1, but double check it. Remember, this is -3.5. Work it back and I guarantee you will get -1. So what I need you to do now is plug in the values, right? Not plug in the values, plot the values. We could probably write them back neatly like this. We could probably, instead of using A, B, and C, we can't use back A, B, and C, right? Because remember, it already have an A, B, and C on the diagram. So you could probably just call it P, Q, and R. So point P is 1 - 3. Point Q is 3 - 2. And R is 5 - 1. Let's plot those points and see what it looks like. P is 1, and we go down to -3. Point Q, 3, and we go down to -2. And R is 5 - 1. Oh, wait, that so happens that C and R, look at it, C and R are the same thing, right? So, right? This is point R here. R and C happen to have the same value. So if you were to take your ruler and join these 3 points, you will get something like that. Once again, yours will look better than mine. Right? So all we did for this question, we were given 2 equations and you drew 2 graphs. So it's nothing brand new. We did drawing graphs since the beginning of class. But what does it mean to solve a simultaneous equation using graphs? Whenever you're solving a simultaneous equation, you will get an X answer and a Y answer. You're already solving for X and Y, for those who did simultaneous equations in school. All you are doing is when you draw the 2 graphs, you are looking for where the graphs meet. Does everyone agree that the 2 graphs meet over here? The 2 graphs intersect or collide at this point? And that point happens to be R or C? Great. That's the solution to the simultaneous equation. The answer for solving the simultaneous equation is 5 - 1. Why is it 5 - 1? That is because that is where the 2 graphs meet or intersect or cut, however your teacher decides to say it. So the X value is 5 and the Y value is -1. So in other words, the answer is X is equal to 5 and Y is equal to -1. Once again, if you are not doing simultaneous equations in school and you only need to know graphs, no harm done. You just learned to draw 2 graphs just now. And for those who need to solve a simultaneous equation, you know how to draw graphs and solve the simultaneous equation now. All right? And don't worry, next week we're going to get a lot more to the line. So for me to get full marks in the exam, to the blue line, I have to put 2x minus 4y is equal to 14 because we just drew that line. No, I will get full marks in the exam.